Hello fellow fencer friends, welcome back to our firing range where we're testing all the weapon types in Earth Defense Force 5. We're finally on Defensor. We had a lot of distractions with DLC and all that, but it's finally time to do Fencer, one of my favorite classes. Let's start with the two dash columns. Fencer's new movement is dashing and then hopping right after, so this is very important. These two columns are very important because you almost always take something from these columns. So let's start here with the sword, the blade here, the best one, level 83. This thing, as I mentioned in the previous video, it shoots through shield screens, so pretty valuable in that respect. It does, as far as the damage-wise, it does 6,079 damage for the fully charged swing, which takes a long time to charge up, but it has a 1,914 meter range, which is ridiculous. It's your best range for any of your dash weapon setups. So if you're looking for something medium range and long range, this is definitely the weapon to go to, because the second charge alone does 2,038 damage with a 287 meter range, and all these cuts cut through enemies, so you can hit multiple enemies with it. So very good weapon overall, very well rounded, quick reload and all that, so very good weapon. So let's go ahead and take one of those. I'm going to just take a, doesn't really matter what I take for my second weapon, because I'm just going to use this as a weapon we're not going to show. Okay, and then also he has a Vibra Roller. This time the Vibra Roller does decent damage. Fully charged, it does 3,600 damage at an 80 meter range, and then it also does 2,400 damage for a 40 meter range for the second charge, and then a 1,200 meter damage and a 16 meter range for the first charge. But you get 75% damage reduction for these, so pretty good. There is a use for them, which I'll show here in a moment, so I'll take one of these as well, and then I'll take a shotgun again. Alright, let's go ahead and take these really quick. Let's take this on a shield screen mission, which is 59 here. I don't use the Vibra Rollers quite as often, but they can be useful here, which I'll show. As far as the sword goes, let me show you. You can't unfortunately shoot or kill the shield screen itself, but you can shoot the enemies inside the shield screen. So I'll try and shoot the shield screen here, and it doesn't work for some reason. I better get inside the shield screen before I die. Okay. However, these gold ants over here, I'm going to hit them from way back here. And there you go, you can see that they got hit, and then now they're coming to me. So very useful in that respect. And like I said, it's the highest range weapon you're gonna get, and the yellow charge is pretty quick, so you can use this thing for medium range, and it's relatively good damage, shoots through enemies. So it's just, if you want to go to full charge, you're gonna have to wait a little bit and then charge it. It does pull you forward a little bit. And then the Vibra Roller. The negative of the Vibra Roller, in my opinion, is when you use it, it locks your camera. So, like right now, I can't turn left or right until I get to the end of it. And once you turn, it kind of like has a sway to it. Like it keeps, like say you're holding right to turn right really quick and then letting go of the trigger, it'll still turn right even when you let go. Kind of like a slow sway from a heavy weapon. So it's kind of disorienting sometimes to use. But one use I found that's pretty useful with this weapon, can't you see I'm making a video? One good use that you can take for using this weapon is if you're trying to get away from wasps, and say you run out of your dash hops and you need to go on the ground and dash 3 times to get back in the air, what you can do is, at the end of your last dash hop in the air, so like say you're running away from wasps because they're so fast, before you get down you can use your hammer to move forward, and then when you get out of the hammer you can continue your dash hops. So it allows you to run really quickly and then have 75% damage reduction till you get to the ground, and then you can continue your dash hops. So it allows you to reset your dash hops without having to dash 3 times on the ground. And like I said, when you're running away from wasps, you'll notice a big difference. by doing this, you actually find yourself getting away from wasps a lot easier without getting hit. And if you do get hit, you have 75% damage reduction in the hammer. So just something to keep in mind. It's a way to reset your dash hops if you really need to get around fast and you can't. And it's too dangerous to go to the ground and dash 3 times, because you are a little bit slower when you're dashing 3 times to reset your dash hops. So I feel like that was a little confusing. So once your dash hops run out, because you only have so many, you have to wait for your hops to have a cooldown. So what you do is you dash 3 times while you're waiting for your jumping to cool down. And then once it's done, then you can continue dash hopping. So this hammer just allows you to bypass having to dash 3 times on the ground, and then it allows you, it's a long enough time to where your hops will be back up from the cooldown. So just something that's I think is a little bit useful to use. But like I said, I don't use it too much to Vibra Roller, but it's a good weapon in my opinion. Let's see, let's move on to the next one. We're on to axes, which are very good actually. As far as the damage goes, the axes are pretty good. The first swing, or the first charge, is 1132 damage at 173 meters, so good range. The second charge, which is fast, is 2264 damage at a 346 meter range. Very, very crazy range for a quick charge. And then the full charge is 3463 damage at a 346 meter range, but it does pull you forward. So let's take one of those. And then the next one would be the finest hammer, which has made it back. It's still very good. It still has 90% damage reduction when you're swinging, so very good for just tanking up front and doing damage. The damage this time around is 2,112 damage, and that's for 135 meter range. It shoots out like a tremor on the ground for 135 meters, so good range. The second charge is 1689 damage at 135 meter range, and then the first charge is 845 at a 45 meter range. So usually you don't use that too often with the first charge. Usually you're doing 3 charges, but I'll take 2 of those to show that. We can do the same mission. So the axes can be good for the Great Shield as well, because it pulls you forward. So say you want to move forward with the shield, it can pull you a little bit forward as well to get a little bit more speed, but it's not the greatest as far as how far it pulls you forward. But anyway, as you can see, the charge is pretty quick for the first 2, so you can get a pretty good charge for a 346 meter range very, very quickly. So this is probably your highest and best medium range weapon for dash hopping, and it does cut through enemies, which is important. Unfortunately, the full charge is a ground-based attack, so it won't attack anything in the air. But still, I think it's a very good weapon, very useful. And I don't use as much as I should, because I've just now been getting more into the blades and enjoying them. But I think I will find myself using this more on normal campaign. And then there's the finest hammer, which on the full charge it pulls you forward a little bit, and it shoots a 135 meter tremor on the ground. So very cool weapon. The damage isn't the greatest, it's only 2,000 some damage, but it's mainly for tanking up front. So if you charge both hammers, so you pull down both triggers, then you can dash forward and then let go of one, dash and let go of the other one, and then by that time the other one's reloaded, so you can dash and do that one, and then dash and do this one, and then dash and do the right one, and then dash and do the left one. So very useful for tanking up front and for moving. I like the finest hammers because it pulls you forward, which allows you to get healing items easier as you're in the front of enemies and just, you know, attacking everything. Plus you have good range on these things, so you're hitting a lot of enemies. And plus, now that you have multiple dashes, it's a lot easier to get the healing items if you need to. But do keep in mind, you only have the 90% damage reduction while you're letting go of the hammer swing, so while you're swinging. And one thing also keep in mind is when you reload, as you can see there as I was reloading, you want to mash the trigger as soon as the reload is up, so you can get your damage reduction back up. So what I do is I do my full charges, you know, until I'm reloading. like this. And then I'm always keeping an eye on the reload bar when it pops up on the screen. And then once you get to a reload, instead of charging up to the full swing, watch my right one here. You'll see that it's not going to be in time, so I have to mash the trigger right there just to get the 90% damage reduction on both of them. And then I go back to the full swing, because it's important to always have your damage reduction up. Because if you wait for the charge after the reload, you're going to be waiting there for 1 second, and 1 second in the middle of a crowd of enemies is not safe. So just something to keep in mind. Alright. And the Vulcan Hammer has made it back. And let's take 2 of those as well. Vulcan Hammer level 56. This time it does 13,589 damage with an 8-meter range. It also has 90% damage reduction. The second charge is 4,500, 4-meter range, and then the first charge is 900 with a 40-meter range, just like a tremor for the first charge, but low damage. So we'll take 2 of those. And also the Quake, I forgot what it's called, Quake Haken or something weird like that, has made it back. Which I've never used really, but this time around it has a 70% damage reduction, which is new because I don't believe it had a damage reduction in the past. So this one's unique, and I'll show what makes it unique when I take it out. But as far as damage wise, it's pretty low. Of course, it's level 54, but 163 damage times 6, and it shoots behind you 67 meters. And then the second charge is 81 times 6, which shoots 67 meters in front of you. And then the first charge is just 45 meters with 200 damage. So I think it needs more damage to be useful, but it's definitely unique, which I'll show here. Let's go to mission 17. I like 17, or not, yeah, 17. Alright, so Volcan Hammers, usually what you can do is you can take one finest hammer and one Vulcan, that way you have high damage on one side and then more range damage on the other one. That way you can get around with the finest hammer easier to get healing items, and you can do higher damage with the Vulcan. But same idea, you just charge them both up and then swing one and then swing the other one in between the dash. The only negative of these is while you're spinning around like this, when you get hit, you get pushed around, so it's kind of hard sometimes to actually hit the enemy you want to hit for this high damage. So, but it's the same thing, same idea. Same idea, brought it back, so. Oops, I don't need to do that. Alright, and then the other weapon is this Scythe looking thing. So the first charge just does like a finest hammer kind of Vibra hammer. It shoots in front of you, a little tremor. And the second one kind of pulls you forward and does like six tremors in front of you. But unfortunately it's weak. That's the problem. I like it, but it's weak. It needs better damage to be useful. And then if you charge it all the way up, it will hit behind you, which is very interesting. So as you're running away, you actually hit enemies behind you. But once again, I think the damage is just a little bit too low to be useful. At least it has damage reduction this time around though, so maybe some use for it. Could be good for frogs that are chasing, dive bobbing you behind. You can just do this and have 2 of them and shoot them behind you, but I don't know. I'm not going to probably use this too often, personally. And then there's one more which is very, very important that you don't want to forget about. And that is the Happy Happy Pillow. So it's this right here. It does massive damage. It does 22.5 damage at a 30-meter range, and it does 15 damage at a 2-meter range, but it has 50% damage reduction. So let's take 2 of these out. And you have to make sure that you're smiling when you use these because it's a Happy Happy Pillow. So let's go out here and try and do some work here with these. Now it's a DLC weapon, unfortunately. So because it's DLC, Premium Edition, it's low, very low, low damage. So what I wish they would have done is, I wish they would have made it so that's a skin, so you could put that on any hammer, because that would be cool, because then you could use it. But I've never used these because of the fact that the damage is so low, even on normal, that there's really no use for them. There's no need to take them out. So I would like to put them on my normal weapons. So that's the only thing I could suggest for them the next time, to actually make it so you can use these weapons. Because not many people are going to be playing on normal after a certain point in the game, or even easy or whatever, so that's too bad. But maybe next time. Alright, now let's move on to the other column. Now this other column is very, very useful. The spine driver has made it back, and this time they made a balance to the spine driver. The spine driver is now the long range weapon. Before, in the previous game, it was spine driver or Blasto Spear, mainly people used because of just how good they were, obscenely good. This time they balanced it by making the spine driver do more range and the blast hole do less range. So as far as the spine driver goes, it doesn't penetrate through enemies. That's important. That's why it makes a difficult decision. So it has a 209 meter range at 5,945 damage. So that's pretty good damage, and the range is really good. And it shoots 1.3 a second, so you can do about 7,700 DPS. So let's take one of those, and let's take, once again, let's take a weapon to dash with. Alright, and then the other one is level 81, which is a flashing spear. Now, I never really used a flashing spear in the previous game because of the range and because of how it locked you in place when you used it. But this time they increased the range. I believe it could increase it a little bit. It's 70 meters maxed for the flashing spear. It does penetrate through enemies. It does 1,415 damage at a 70 meter range. It shoots 10 a second, so that's 14,150 damage per second. So high damage per second, but a very short range. So let's take one of those as well. And let's take a weapon. Alright, now let's take these out. Now, the 70 meters isn't a problem anymore, in my opinion, for the best one. It's okay range, and it's good DPS, 14,000 damage per second. But the problem is, it still does the same thing. So here's the spine driver first. Spine driver is very good range, and it's good for like more precise targeting and long range targeting. It stuns cosmonauts and colonists as well, so it's good at that respect as well. Only unfortunately has a 9 magazine, which can be a little bit of a problem, but it's a good weapon for keeping it a little bit of a range. Although I think maybe the sword outclasses it now that I think about it, because I never, like I said, never used it much before, but now that I've been using it more, I'm more impressed. You get good range, good medium range at the second charge, and it penetrates your targets, and a high range at the full charge. So maybe I think that's better than the spine driver. I don't know. Spine driver still can be useful though. And then there's the flashing spear. Now the flashing spear still, same idea, is it locks you in place when you use it, so you can't really move. The reload time's a little bit too long for me too, is another reason why I don't really care for it. But as you can see, when you're using it, you cannot move. But because you can dash hop with it, it's not the hugest deal. Before you had to use a catapult to dash around with it, and then you had to stop and shoot. But now that you can hop, you can kind of do it start in midair, and then once you get to the ground, you can stop. So it's more useful now, but I still think other weapons outclass it, such as the Blasto Spear, which I'll show here in a moment. So yeah, there's that weapon. Now let's go back. The Twin Spear is next, and that has made it back. It is ridiculous damage per second. Here we go. It does 3,170 damage times 2 at a 56 meter range for the first shot, and then 6,341 damage times 2 at a 56 meter range on the second shot. It penetrates 2 targets, but the range is so short you're not going to notice it too much. And it can do 19,000 damage per second, so pretty good. If you can get good at this weapon, I think it's very, very strong. It's just you need to get good at it. It takes practice, which I'll show why here in a moment. And then the next weapon I want to show is the Blasto Spear, level 78. This made it back. This used to be the go-to weapon before in the past because of its range. It had like 300, forgot now, it's been so long, 300 some meter range. Now they made it so it has 124 meter range for the second shot. Now, I think that's a perfect idea. They couldn't have done a better job, because this weapon now, I have a tough time choosing what I want to take into battle. It's not just, oh, blast hole only, of course. I think they made the perfect range on this thing, honestly. It's good for, like I said, groups of enemies and penetrating through targets, but it's no longer the best sniper, which it shouldn't do both. It shouldn't do crowd control and sniping. So now it's a tough choice between the Spine Driver at 209 meters or the Blasto at 124 meters, which I think is perfect, and then the Sword if you want to go really far damage. So let's take one of those as well. I still use both. I still use the Blasto Spear, and I'm very happy with it. It's good damage. And the range, like I said, is perfect in my opinion. It can still hit you know, drones and stuff at range, but it's not obsessive range. So now this is the Blast Twin Spear. It does pull you forward, but it doesn't pull you quite as forward as some of the other ones in the past games. So it's a little bit easier to use. Like I said, if you can get good at this, if you can measure your range and attack a colonist or a cosmonaut with this thing, you'll just absolutely destroy them. So it takes a little bit of time, a little practice getting used to, but it's definitely one of the highest DPSs for Fencer. Plus you can use two of them if you want to as well and use it to get around the map faster, but dash hopping now is, I think, faster way to do it than before. So, alright, and then there's the Blasto Spear, which is still a fast Blasto Spear. And like I said, I think it's pretty good now, so, or I think it's perfect balance, so it's good against crowds, of course. You're going to hit through multiple enemies, you're going to do good damage, and with the dash hopping around with it, I think it's even easier to use, which is awesome, so I'm happy with it. It's a good weapon. And it's good at stunning the colonists, cosmonauts as well. But yeah, Blasto Spear. I think it's a balance and it's a good weapon now. So I'm happy with that. Alright, we got two more. The Jackhammers made it back. And it's the same as the past games. You're going to have, unfortunately, low range, 64 meter range, but high damage. It does, let's see, 1,358 damage at a 64 meter range. It shoots 6.7 per second, so that's 9,100 damage per second, but no penetration, and that's the big reason I usually stay away from this weapon. Let's go ahead and take one of those, and then there's also the 67 Blast Hole back, which is interesting in that it's very high damage for level 67 for one. So if you're playing on hard or hardest, if you can have access to this, very good. And it does the same damage as the 78 Blast Hole at the lower level, but it's a little bit slower. And and the second shot is the one that does the most damage, 9,000 damage for the second shot. The first one does 3,600. So let's take one of those. The range is a little bit lower than the level 78. It's 117 meter range instead of 124. So in the past game, I believe 67 had more range. No, I think it had more damage than the 78 Blast Hole, but not more range. So this time around they have the same damage. So Jackhammer, it's a good weapon. I don't know. Like I said, I've never been too hot on the Jackhammer because, like I said, it doesn't penetrate through targets and the range is kind of bad. The newest DLC one has a higher range, which is cool. I want to say it's 90 meters, 96 meters, something like that. So I can see using it more for that reason, but hitting one target at a time, I've never been a big fan of that. I always like the penetrating weapons he has. It's good for stunning colonists and cosmonauts, but I've never been a big fan of that tactic either, where you dash towards them and then just stun lock them to death. I kind of like range fighting a little bit better, or using something else, some other weapon type for them. But anyway, it's back. It's definitely a cool concept. I love the idea of the Jackhammer. It's just a crazy weapon. I just wish they'd give it more range, honestly, because I think it wouldn't hurt. It hurt the weapon because of the fact it doesn't penetrate their enemies. So even if they gave it like a 200 meter range or 150 meter range, I don't think it would break the weapon. I think it would balance the weapon, in my opinion. So, all right, and then there's the Blast Hole here. Level 67, very high damage. The second shot takes a little bit more time, a little bit more stun. It stuns you a little bit longer in place to set it off. But in the past game, you had to constantly dash around and then attack with it, so you'd be stuck in place. But now that you have a dash hop, you can use it in the air, and it's not going to penalize you for that slow animation. You just want to make sure you're in the air when you use the second swing. So, a lot more useful in my opinion now. So, but there you go. That's all the dash weapons that I wanted to cover. Whoops, why did I do that? As far as overall thoughts, Fencer is one of the few classes that feels very, very similar in weapons, but very, very different in play, which I'm happy with, honestly, because it makes Fencer feel fresh. Just this deal alone, the dash hop adding the mechanic to the game, makes him feel a completely different class, even though his weapons, for the most part, are almost all the same, just with a few balance changes. Like I said, with the level 78 Blasto Spear, they lowered the range, and the Spine Driver, they increased the range. So, I think it's a perfect choice, like I said, in my opinion. But yeah, overall, I think I still gravitate towards the Blasto or the Spine Driver or the Sword. Those are my main go-to weapons, and sometimes Hammer. But yeah, very strong column, and very happy with them. So that'll be it for this section. Next, we'll cover the shields and the hopping weapons. So once again, thanks a lot for watching, and remember, EDF doesn't leave a man behind, ever. Hope to see you in the next video.